2 decades after the Great War, Europe existed in the uneasy calm of denial. The Treaty of Versailles had redrawn the map, but not the resentment. Germany, crippled by debt and humiliation, had turned bitterness into ideology. Adolf Hitler promised redemption through defiance, and the world, weary of bloodshed, preferred to believe him. Britain and France, still haunted by their cemeteries of youth, chose appeasement over confrontation. Diplomats dined, signed, and reassured themselves that stability could be purchased by compromise. Poland, reborn only 20 years earlier, found itself trapped between two predators, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Its leaders trusted Western guarantees, unaware those promises would dissolve like mist. In August 1939, the unthinkable happened. Germany and the USSR, sworn enemies, signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it meant peace. Secretly, it divided Eastern Europe. Poland's fate was written in invisible ink. German troops massed along the border, and trains rolled east under blackout curtains. The world held its breath, not because it expected peace, but because it feared to face the truth. The next war had already begun. On the final night of peace, Germany staged its justification. In the border town of Gleiwitz, SS operatives disguised as Polish soldiers stormed a German radio station. They broadcast a short message, a fake Polish call to arms, and left behind corpses dressed in Polish uniforms. It was theater, cruel and precise, crafted to fool history. Hitler's propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, wasted no time. Newspapers screamed of Polish aggression, and by morning, the world had its casus belli. At dawn, Hitler declared before the Reichstag, "Since 5:45 this morning, we are shooting back." In truth, Germany had been preparing for months. Operation Fall Weiss was an orchestration of tanks, aircraft, and infantry. The first test of a new kind of war. As the first shells exploded across the Polish frontier, dive bombers screamed overhead. Villages vanished in seconds. The lie of Gleiwitz did not need to be believed by all. Europe had seen wars of honor and defense. This one began with forgery and murder. The world's descent into darkness started not with an army's roar, but with a broadcast that lasted less than a minute. At 4:45 a.m., the battleship Schleswig-Holstein opened fire on the Polish garrison at Westerplatte. That thunderclap echoed across a continent. From the Baltic to the Carpathians, German columns surged forward. Tanks crushed border defenses, motorized divisions rolled through the countryside, and Stuka dive bombers howled overhead like mechanical vultures. Civilians woke to chaos. Trains derailed, bridges collapsed, entire towns vanished in clouds of smoke. The Polish army, brave but outdated, faced an enemy that moved too fast to fight conventionally. Horses charged tanks, rifles fired at planes, courage against machinery. At Westerplatte, 180 Polish soldiers resisted for 7 days against thousands, becoming symbols of defiance. Yet for all their valor, Poland's forces were fighting a new kind of enemy. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, was not just speed, it was precision and terror combined. Each strike cut communications, crippled reinforcements, and shattered morale. In the world's capitals, leaders watched the invasion unfold and prayed it would end quickly. It would not. In less than a week, the heart of Poland was burning, and the modern age of warfare had arrived. The Blitzkrieg was a weapon forged from fear and coordination. It fused the power of modern technology with the psychology of collapse. Tanks no longer supported infantry. Infantry followed tanks. Aircraft didn't merely bomb. They blinded, destroying railways, bridges, and radios to turn defense into confusion. Commanders like Heinz Guderian and Erich von Manstein turned theory into movement. Columns advanced day and night, guided by radios and precision maps, moving faster than intelligence could report. To the Polish defenders, the front was everywhere and nowhere at once. In less than 2 weeks, half the country was under German control. Civilians fled in endless caravans, bombed from above as they sought safety that didn't exist. The Wehrmacht captured not just land, but imagination. The myth of invincibility was born. To many observers, Blitzkrieg looked like genius. In truth, it was organized brutality, efficiency without empathy, speed without restraint. The world, mesmerized by its success, didn't yet understand that the same storm would soon sweep across Europe, leaving behind only ruins and silence. While the Wehrmacht advanced, Poland refused to collapse quietly. In Warsaw, civilians dug trenches beside soldiers, students became couriers, priests became medics, and families shared their last food in candlelit basements. Radio Warsaw broadcast calls for help. We are bombed. We will fight on Britain and France, bound by treaty, declared war on Germany on September 3rd, yet did nothing. The phony war had begun. While Polish cities burned, Allied generals waited behind the Maginot Line, unwilling to move. Hitler had gambled that the West would hesitate, and he won. The skies over Poland filled with smoke and betrayal. The Polish Air Force, vastly outnumbered, fought brilliantly, but was hunted to exhaustion. The myth of cavalry charging tanks, spread by Nazi propaganda, concealed real heroism. Infantry fighting in streets, bridges held until the last bullet. For 3 weeks, Poland endured the impossible. When Warsaw finally surrendered, it was not defeat born of weakness, but of abandonment. Europe had chosen to watch courage die in real time. As Poland bled in the west, a new invader crossed from the east. At dawn on September 17th, the Red Army rolled across the border under the pretext of protecting minorities. It was Stalin's half of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the secret agreement now made visible in tanks and uniforms. Trapped between two totalitarian powers, Poland ceased to exist as a state. The government fled south. Soldiers tried to reach neutral borders. Thousands were captured, herded into camps in Kozelsk, Ostashkov, and Starobelsk, names that would later echo in tragedy. The Katyn massacre was still months away, but its seeds were planted here. The Soviet advance crushed any hope of continued resistance. By October, Germany and the USSR divided the spoils, parading together in joint victory marches. The nation that had endured for centuries vanished from maps. Yet Poland's soldiers would fight on, in exile, in resistance, in the skies over Britain, carrying the memory of betrayal as both wound and weapon. The world saw the borders redrawn, but few grasped that a moral line had been crossed forever. By mid-September, Warsaw was a city under siege and on fire. The Luftwaffe bombed without mercy, hospitals, markets, water mains, everything that breathed. Fires merged into a single horizon of orange and ash. Civilians huddled underground, counting hours between raids. Soldiers out of ammunition fought with grenades made from bottles. When water ran out, they used milk to douse flames. Yet still, the city held. For 3 weeks, Warsaw became a symbol of defiance the world could hear, but not save. "We will fight until the end," the radio crackled before going silent forever. On September 27th, the city surrendered. 25,000 civilians were dead. A quarter of the capital lay in ruins. Hitler's photographers recorded the victory for propaganda reels, while in basements, survivors whispered prayers for vengeance. To Germany, Warsaw's fall was proof that Blitzkrieg worked. To history, it marked something darker, the moment Europe's conscience went quiet. In London and Paris, leaders congratulated themselves for having fulfilled their obligations by declaring war. But declarations without action were hollow. For months, the Western Front stayed eerily calm, soldiers waiting in trenches, newspapers printing optimism. The period became known as the Sitzkrieg, the sitting war. While Hitler tightened his grip on Poland, Britain dropped leaflets instead of bombs. France mobilized millions, but advanced only a few miles into German territory before halting. Diplomats called it prudence. History calls it paralysis. Hitler understood the psychology of his enemies better than their generals did. He knew democracies feared uncertainty more than aggression. By the time winter arrived, Poland was erased, its people enslaved, and Europe's moral authority shattered. The West had chosen delay over danger, diplomacy over duty. It was not the last time such a choice would feed catastrophe. The conquest of Poland became the blueprint for modern warfare. German generals studied every maneuver, refining their doctrine of rapid destruction. Communication was the hidden weapon. Radios synchronized tanks, artillery, and aircraft in perfect timing. Enemy lines dissolved before commanders could react. The Blitzkrieg's genius lay in tempo, never letting the opponent think. Yet behind the image of mechanical precision lay chaos and cruelty. Civilians were bombed deliberately to choke refugee routes and panic defenders. Villages were burned to clear paths for tanks. The campaign was not simply military victory. It was a psychological experiment. Could terror itself be efficient? The answer, horrifyingly, was yes. Foreign observers admired the efficiency without understanding the cost. Blitzkrieg wasn't evolution, it was moral collapse disguised as progress. What Germany proved in Poland was not how to win wars, but how to erase humanity from the equation of victory. By October, the campaign was over. In just 5 weeks, Hitler had conquered a nation of 35 million and humiliated Europe's diplomacy. The Blitzkrieg was hailed as unstoppable, the symbol of a new age. But behind the triumph lay a warning. Poland's defeat was not just a military event. It was a prophecy. It revealed how quickly democracies crumble when fear replaces resolve, how easily treaties dissolve when not defended by courage. The invasion exposed the true face of totalitarian ambition. That conquest could be cloaked in legality, propaganda, and lies. In the months to come, the same tactics would strike Denmark, Norway, France, and beyond. Yet the first victim remained Poland, betrayed, divided, but unbroken in spirit. The war that began with a lie at Gleiwitz would end years later in the ruins of Berlin. But in September 1939, the world still believed it could contain the fire. It could not. The fuse had already burned to its end.